What is up, Prime Nation? Happy Canada Day. We do these consistently every Thursday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we didn't want to disappoint. So today we're going to be digging into how to build a real estate business, but also execute a content creation strategy at a very high level. And we're bringing on my boy, Matt Lamarsh, to talk about that. Matt is an amazing real estate agent, runs a great operation down in Atlanta, has an affinity for Porsches and very nice cars. So maybe we'll get into that as well, but is also really leveling up very quickly. So I figured, why not get him on Prime People? We'll really dig into the tangible, how he got into the business, how he scaled. He's always growing, what he's growing in now, and what he thinks the industry needs to grow into in the future. But on top of that, so many people, probably like you, are struggling with content strategy. You have to do it. It's undeniable at this point, but how do you do it effectively? And we were just jamming on YouTube and a whole bunch of stuff before this. So we'll get into that in a little bit. So very excited. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you go check out his socials. Say hi. He's super accessible. Follow him on Clubhouse and we will get right into it. Welcome to the Prime People podcast, where we cover all things that got us to where we are today, our team building strategies, the marketing and sales tips that we've learned through thousands of transactions, productivity tips, ways to really just hold yourself accountable to accomplishing what you want to accomplish, and all things content creation, personal development, and not to mention we have some of the best guests on the planet. Hello. Well, Matt Lamarsh, thank you so much for joining us today. And how are things down in Atlanta? I know that we're north of the border here, but why don't you give us some insights into your territory and what's happening in your world?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you. I'm so honored to be here. And I really admire you, as you know. But if you guys have not, if this is the first episode you're watching, I really hope you'll come back and check out the content, because there's nobody better in this game. So I really appreciate your time today. Here in Atlanta, it's probably like a lot of Canada and a lot of the United States at this point, right? Where the market's crazy. Really, really talented agents are being stretched, and new agents are really being challenged to not just grow their business, but also just stay ahead of the trends, right? So it's wildly, wildly hot. We have a ton of people moving here from out of the country, from out of the state. So it's an interesting time in Atlanta, Georgia.
So check this out. We do a room every Wednesday, the Great Canadian Real Estate Networking Room, where we talk about inventory fluctuations, and you constantly show up. And you said something yesterday in that room that I thought was fascinating. And you said, yes, we are worlds apart, but what we're seeing in the marketplace is very similar. And I get a lot of value from that. And I tell my builders and my clients, I'm like, the reason we do that room is we see what's coming down the pipeline before it actually hits us. So if you were speaking to your clients, what would you think the value of networking with people north of the border would be in your world?
Yeah, well, this is kind of crazy to say, but like what works in Canada works in the United States. What works across the country, really from like a philosophical standpoint, right? The business is the same. We're all trying to accomplish the same thing. It's just in a totally different environment. And what I mean by that is like geographically, right? So, but I think, again, everything is the exact same thing. We're helping people buy, sell, and invest in real estate, and honestly build wealth, right? We talk about the buy, sell, and invest a lot, but wealth building through real estate is probably the greatest, most proven tactic to do that, right? So I think it's really, really important that we all learn from each other, right? And what are you guys doing, and what can we apply to our businesses here?
Yeah, very, very true. Our boy Levi, living in Dallas, Texas, says, let's go. Let's drop some gems. Eureka's here as well. Hey, Clubhouse family. Nice to see you, Eureka, Joe, Kari. This is a prime example, no pun intended, of what that collaboration does. And people are people. And also, I'm also noticing inventory fluctuations seem to follow patterns, right? Our boy Ray Allen, we were doing the Bearded Men of Real Estate podcast yesterday, and he was talking about lumber futures dropping. The buyer surge seems to be very different than it was last year at the same time. And we've noticed in our marketplace a definite drop off of the amount of showings. I pulled those stats yesterday, and a lot of agents, I talked to one yesterday that he expected like 10 offers on a property. He got 2 conditional offers. They signed them back and it's not sold. And you were saying yesterday how we're noticing patterns of, still a super hot market and lots of properties selling way over if they're priced aggressively. But do you find the same kind of patterns transcend across North America?
100%. Yeah. And you know this from being in all these rooms, right? We're hearing from the West Coast, from the East Coast, and everywhere in Middle America that, the challenge that we've been experiencing for the last year has not really changed. Now the dynamics have changed and the response to those dynamics have changed. And so you're exactly right. Even as much as a month ago, I had a property come on and we had something like 11 offers. And I thought, it's kind of like a downward trend, right? And then I placed a house on the market this past week and got 5. And it was like, okay. But what's really, really interesting about that, Justin, is that the number of offers versus the quality of the offers. And I think that's a really, really important part, because when you've priced appropriately, you will get better results, right? Like,
Yep.
There's no smoke and mirrors around that. Like, the market knows what the market knows, and it will always dictate what something is worth, period. End of story.
Yeah, I heard a story in LA actually that they're getting so many offers that are falling apart on the appraisal gap that they're now looking at the solidity of the buyer, the solvency of the buyer, I guess, over and beyond just the price point. So that should tell consumers and professionals out there that, there are things happening. But imagine a day where you'd say, 9 offers on a property, things are really cooling down when 5 or 6 years ago, average days on market's like 3 to 6 months, right?
It's crazy. And especially if you haven't been a seller of real estate things here recently, I mean, yeah, you have no context, right? If it's been 7 to 10 years, you have no idea what to expect. And all you're doing is probably reading headlines that are unfortunately spreading some misinformation about what's actually happening, like boots on the ground, like you and I do.
Oh man. And this is why I have so much fun with you. I mean, talk about headlines. We can dig into this for an hour. And I tell people, don't read the news. Google is not your R&D department. The news that you're reading is 60 days old. We were looking into motorhomes today randomly, and I was talking to a sales guy, and sales guy, we were having fun, right? And he's giving me the gears about being in real estate. And he's like, well, we're thinking of selling, but it's crazy out there. I'm like, let me give you the insider scoop. I'm like, what you're reading is news that's like 60s, 90 days old. Boots on the ground, I can tell you that offers are showing up on offer date and they're not getting multiples and you're getting conditions. So I said, if you and your wife have been waiting to go, your sale price is solid, sales aren't backtracking in value, you may be able to buy that next property. And he's not even in my market. So I think being aware of the news cycle and what's important and what's not definitely is an important skill to have. So before we dig into, how you got started as a new real estate agent, and I'm going to go through a list of items with you, and we'll do rapid fire, rip through. It'll be a lot of fun. And then we'll dig into content. How did you develop that skill? I guess, how do you look at news and headlines and decipher them in your position being an expert in real estate?
Yeah, well, and I know you talk a lot about this, right? Like the primary, secondary, and tertiary markets, right? Well, the same thing exists in the consumer base, right? Like they were the first adopters that were like, real estate's crazy, I'm going to get in, the prices are going up. And 6 months ago, they actually didn't get as much as they could have maybe even a month ago, right? So now you have this second wave of people coming in. And here in Atlanta specifically, we've seen a massive spike. And I know you and Glenda talked a little bit about this last week, but a lot more inventory coming on, but also, and almost congruent with that same number and parallel to the same results, more sales. And so our problem really isn't solved here. And so, when you talk about these different waves of real estate and the cycles that it's coming in, yes, we're still in a seller's market, but now what's happening is you're seeing qualified buyers come with much stronger offers, which 6 months ago we just didn't have. So it's an interesting change, and you do have to stay on top of this stuff. And like you said, conversations in Clubhouse, conversations like this, where what's happening in your area, and are there leading indicators in other areas like commercial that lead into residential? And certainly commercial has just been thrown for a tailspin with this whole thing over the last year. But we can look at other major markets like New York and LA and Chicago and really understand the dynamics of what might be coming down the pipe for Atlanta.
Phenomenal. And I think that's where it is. If you're watching this stream, let us know what you think the leading indicators in your market are. What do you think makes a difference for the buyers and the sellers and what's coming down the pipeline? It is Canada Day. My daughter is excited, so you may hear a piano in the background. I just pulled my earphone off. This is real life, people. You are living it with me. And our boy Ray Allen is here. What's up? Let's go. And I grew this out specifically for his podcast. So shout out to our boy
we
Ray.
Can't quite make their show, can we?
No, I don't think so, man. I need another 4 years. But Ray did have a question. Do you think some of that is the market has caught up to the comparative market analysis that agents are doing before they list, which means price gains are slowing? Your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, so here in Atlanta, we saw about a 22% increase over the last year, which is a massive number. I mean, that's a massive, massive number. So if you had a $300,000 house, I think it's worth 380, maybe even as high as 400. I mean, that's a massive increase now. And so when talking about comparative analysis, what I'm seeing is two groups here. The first is the high producing agents that are in tune with what's happening in their market and in these areas that they serve. And then the whole other group of part-time, half-time, kind of sort of time
That's true.
that don't really understand what's happening in the market. And again, kind of back to those headlines, reading the headlines as a seller is one thing. Reading the headlines as an agent is a whole nother. And I'm really scared about some of those agents that don't do this on a full-time basis and are not really in tune to the dynamics, how things are changing. But now we're starting to see the market adjust appropriately to what the market will take.
I think that people like you, though, are forcing those other agents to catch up, right? They're going into meetings and they're realizing who they're up against and that the level of game is changing. One of the reasons we did this episode, and I told Matt this beforehand, was I want to speak to consumers. So if you're a buyer, a seller, this is important to you as much as it is anybody else, to understand where we're putting our energy and efforts, right? We can put a sign on your lawn. The market's amazing. We can price it. You can sell your house for free. You can sell it yourself. Where I think the value of an agent is exactly what you said, Matt. It's, searching for information and growing and trying to become that consultant that it like the back of your hand. The high performance room you and Amanda hosted last night was all about that. It was about being, what is it? Unconsciously incompetent, then consciously incompetent. And then it was consciously competent and then unconsciously competent, which is essentially, I think I got it. It's essentially that cycle though, where it becomes a habit, right? And I think you've really developed that habit of being able to answer a question like that in depth, just like Eureka and Andy, right? They're in Silicon Valley, and without missing a beat, she says the leading indicator is Apple stock price. Yeah, keep buying Apple products so you can thank me for increasing the value in your markets. And then Levi had one more. Have you ever gone up against Glenda Baker for a listing? If so, who won? Oh, there you go. I should have read that before I posted it.
Yeah. So Glenda has been selling real estate since Jesus was a baby, as you all know. So I have not been in real estate that long. In fact, I've only been in as an agent for 2.5 years, but as an investor for about 12. And so me and my wife actually used to be an agent as well. I don't think a lot of people know that, but we bought our first rental property as our first home and then moved down here to our new suburb of Sandy Springs about 10, 11 years ago. So, kind of seeing her in the field, right? As a buyer's agent and really understanding, she was in a totally opposite market of what we are in now, right? She was in a buyer market. And then the crash came and she had an opportunity to leave, so she did. But back to Ray's point about, and to what you mentioned about that room last night, being able to move through that, right? Go from practice to habit is really, really important. And we used to say, at least here in Atlanta, that like every 2 to 3 weeks, there was a reset. There was just a hard reset where you would look at the last 3 or 4 weeks of properties listed, properties sold, at what percentage, at what prices, and what averages. And you would say, okay, that's the new normal. Well, over the last year, we've really had to adjust for like every week, every 10 days, in fact, to really keep it moving because things were just moving so fast. You guys, even up there, saw, properties going under contract within a day, if not a couple of hours. And so when you see that kind of fire happening, typically there's smoke associated with it, and you try to see, again, those leading indicators, what's happening here, and also what's about to happen. So no one has a crystal ball. No one can actually, justify what might be coming down. All we're doing is making educated guesses at this point.
Yeah. And I think being fast and educated is super, super important, and being able to just put your ego aside. And kudos to you and Glenda, right? I forget you're in competing markets or in the same market, technically competitors, but I have lots of people that I pour into and collaborate with on Clubhouse that are in my market. And it's such a scarcity mindset. When I see agents that think like they want to act behind closed doors, they want to double end every deal, they want to cut people out of transactions. It is such a bad way to do this business. And you will live that life of negativity and scarcity in your own life if that's what you're putting out there. So you guys have probably one of the best relationships I've seen on Clubhouse, and shout out to all of our Clubhouse peeps.
Well, and to answer Levi's question, I have not been up against Glenda, but I cannot wait for that day because
I'm excited.
An amazing transaction on it for everyone involved.
Oh, it'll be so much fun. And you know what? I think it comes down to candor and being your authentic self, and you will have so much fun. She'll be a firecracker. I'm sure you guys will go back and forth, and then you'll probably break bread after and just laugh about it and, do good jobs for your buyers and sellers, which makes me happy. Not even being remotely connected to either of you. Seeing good work with good people is what this is all about. So when you got started as a new real estate agent, we're going to really jump into this, and I'm going to go back to the basics, right? Brand new agents that are looking to get into the business, even the consumers, I want them to understand the education process. How did you How did you first get into understanding even the license requirements? And then when you got licensed, how did you get a grip on your personal business expenses? Because I think that's an interesting place to start.
Yeah, so it's really interesting you asked that question that way, because for me, I had failure early on as an entrepreneur. I had an eBay business that I tried to sell stuff for people and consign on eBay, their stuff, small businesses, nonprofit, anyone that had stuff sitting around, I would sell it for them. The market shifted about that 07, 08 time, and my business just vaporized, just gone. I had to pick myself back up, dust myself off, and start charging forward on what's next. And so for me, a big hard pill to swallow was to go back into corporate America, to re-hone and to really craft my own craft and my own skills around sales and marketing. And so that's what I did for about 12 years. And then back in 2015, I decided I'd had enough of the corporate world, and financial things were changing in our life, that it was like, I don't want someone else determining my financial destiny. I want 100% control here. And so that's when I decided to open my lawn care and landscaping business, and then sold it back in 2019. But that was really like my first stake in the ground that I could say, I built something and it was successful and I was good at it. And what's crazy about that business is that in 4 years, I spent $500 in marketing, period. All marketing, print, social. I didn't do anything that costs money. $500 in 4 years. And so for everyone that's talking about, we got to have money to go out and do, yes, you do. But in terms of marketing and sales, which is what I've been trained in and what I've been paid to do for years and years and years, it doesn't take a lot of money. And especially in real estate, the same is true. So there's this great website. I'm sure you guys have all heard of it. It's Google. I went there and I typed in how to get a real estate license in Georgia. And I started going through the process, found out that there was a 2-week course. You just jam it in 80 hours and get right through the pre-licensing, and then actually go and apply for the state license. And so I did the courses in November, took the license in early December, passed, and then started my brokerage journey in January of 2019. So a little bit of overlap there, but for me, again, that was really, really important to prove to myself that I could do this. I could do it on a shoestring budget, and I could just market like crazy through grassroots referral, which I knew would ultimately lead me really, really well in real estate. So that's a little bit of the transition there.
Yeah, I love it. And I mean, I've learned so much about you that I didn't know, even though we've spent probably hundreds of hours at this point together. I didn't know about the Amazon business or eBay and the online. And I mean, you're really getting a crash course in online interaction with people you don't know, selling them things. You're looking at a business where right now the online mediums are a wide open green space, and a lot of people think they're oversaturated, but you can still get into real estate and market yourself for $0, people. You have time or money in the beginning. If you have no money and lots of time, you definitely have the ability to execute. So why don't we meld the two a little bit before we kind of get in? We're going to stay real estate focused for this segment. We're going to move into some content strategy a little bit later on. But for right now, I definitely think it's worth bringing it up. If you were talking to a brand new agent or even a consumer, how do you think agents can effectively use their time and maybe the digital products that are out there to get the most attention to build their business and get the job done for their clients?
Yeah, great question. So I think, I was asked this question the other day on a podcast interview, and it had me stumped for a moment. I was like, what would I do? So the question was, if you had $1,000 and could go back and start over, what would you do? And I was like, wow, okay. So $1,000, not a lot of money when you're talking about marketing, right? But also that's enough money that you can make an impact. And so my answer real quickly was $10 a person, $5 coffee for me, $5 coffee for them, 100 people. I'm going to take them out and I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to re-engage with them. And I mean high school buddies and college friends and people that I haven't, spoken to in years and years and years, that I know I have the foundational stuff there. But to answer your question more directly, as far as social media goes, like you said, it's free. It takes time. And that's all you have when you're a new agent, because generally speaking, no one walks into their first week of real estate and having been licensed right into a transaction. And so for me, the reason that answer was so important was because that is exactly what I would go back and do. I would focus a little bit of money, but so much more importantly, the time. And it's funny, in this clubhouse room that I posed that same question, 2 or 3 other people jumped on, and now we built this whole marketing strategy around that $1,000 and these 100 people. And so, yes, the $10 per coffee total for the 2 of us, yes, 100 people, but also now I have 100 posts, I can take 100 selfies with those people, and I can tag those coffee shops, and I can tag those restaurants, or, you know, wherever I am. I can geotag them on Instagram. I can post it on Facebook. I could even do a YouTube video leading up to how I met this person, why they're important to me, so on and so forth. And so, you know, kind of bringing those two together. And the way that I think about marketing is, this is all about client relationships. Like, it's all about client management. And if people have liked and trust you in the past, I mean, I can't tell you how many people from my lawn care and landscaping days and eBay business even came over into the fold in my real estate business. And I think that's really, really, really underrated, but also really important for people to understand. There is another cheaper way that you can actually have a really, really big impact with the people that are legitimately sitting right here.
There's so much to unpack in that answer. So I want to break it down for the people just so that they understand how I'm thinking about what you just said. So if I'm brand new in the business, I mean, the connection, the face-to-face, I talked about digital and social. You brought it to belly, which actually is digital and social, but in real life, right? So you said, no, literally, I'm going to go back and I'm going to rekindle relationships that maybe I didn't have time to pour into when I was doing the other businesses. But, you know, I just take them out for coffee and talk. And when you took them out for coffee and talked, you probably weren't just like, hey, I'm in real estate now. It probably came up in conversation, but what was that interaction like when you were taking these people out for coffee?
Yeah, I mean, you know, people, it's funny because you think, and real estate is like such a head game, right? Like, we get inside our own heads so often and so frequently that we put our own barriers in front of us. And a really, really smart guy once told me, don't say no for the other guy. Like, first of all, if I reach out to 1,000 people, I'm pretty sure I can get 100 of them to agree to a coffee with me, right? Like, I'll come to you, coffee's on me, I want 20 minutes of your time, right? Like, there's no real value for the replacement of that. I mean, that, like you said, the belly to belly, no social stories, no YouTube videos ever going to replace that. And that's a really important integral piece of this, is that people are using social media as it's the replacement of there is no replacement for that. I'm just going to state it now. You have to do both. And that's where I think with especially content and real estate, I'm getting people to buy into me first. Me, the husband, me, the father, me, the car enthusiast. Yes, me, the realtor, but I don't talk about real estate all day long because I don't want people to just think of me in that way. I want them to think of me as, that guy's like me. He has a young family. He's trying to feed that young family. He's trying to build a business. And by God, he is working really, really hard to do so. So that's just the way I think about it. And honestly, I think that's where the differentiation comes. Before I was leading up to getting my license and stuff, I went and followed every real estate agent in Atlanta on Instagram and on Facebook. And I saw what they were doing. I'm like, zero engagement. Like, I would never like this post. I would never comment on it. I don't care about that house you sold. I don't care about the one you just listed. And honestly, the only ones that I ever saw and really felt like any sort of, you know, fire boil up in me was the like faces at closing. Because it was like, okay,
humans,
like people they work with, right? Like, that's it.
Yeah, for sure.
Now we're humanizing that part of the business, but yeah, I mean, there's just we could talk hours, literally hours about this, but yeah, that's kind of my surface level on that.
I absolutely love it, and I want to focus a little bit on that, right, from the standpoint of understanding that this is a belly to belly business, and the people that we work with, it matters. The human beings matter. I don't care if they're just getting started in life or they're multi-millionaires. They all have inherent value. And I think when I look at people like you and everybody that's on the stream, shout out to Jaime Resendez, Eurico, indicating that the value of an agent when the market changes, plan A no longer works. Are you ready for plan B, C, and D? And all these people, Ray, Levi, everybody that I'm seeing here, they're not really real estate agents. None of the people that work at Prime are really real estate agents, right? They're experts at real estate, but they're more than that. They're the person that, like, when I come to Atlanta and we're going to race cars one day, you're the guy that I'm going to call because you've naturally just shown me what you're passionate about. And I can't help but think about it. I was talking about you with Michael Reese. He's an amazing agent that I hired. He's a developer, builder, loves Porsches and nice cars as well. And I'm like, you need to meet this guy. I'm sure there's going to be a collaboration down the road, but there's so much more there where now you have access to a guy that understands luxury design. This guy understands code. Like, everything you love about real estate is in Mike's head. So now you create a connection there. Mike's connected. So in all likelihood, he knows somebody that may end up moving to Atlanta, or by proximity knows somebody that knows somebody who's going to Atlanta. And this is where the value is for the consumers. And I want to make sure people are paying attention. So get off your other tabs and other browsers. Pay attention to this. Understand that every single person you pour into probably knows 150 people. And the efforts that you make to be a genuine person and give, right? My mother-in-law says, "I dies hard," when you really are trying to give to other people without an expectation that they're going to give you something back. They remember that. And I think the efforts that you put doing that put you in a position that when you turn your eyes to digital marketing and you realize that, okay, now I understand what I like and the interactions that really speak to me, that gave you an ability to go to that medium and translate it in a very different way. But speaking about something yesterday, and it was with Jeanette, and it was from a Clubhouse consultation we did. And I said, imagine this, we had two photos. One was an agent that said, "I sold this amazing $5 million house, $200,000 over asking price." And it's a photo of the house. And then it's a photo that Matt Lamarsh put up, and it's a photo of a banister. And it talks about the millwork and the trades that have years past, and you can't build them like they used to. Which one's going to bring you more of an emotional draw, right? So let's transition into the digital medium. And what were you doing content strategy wise when you were, say, early on in your career? And how do you look at content marketing now?
Yeah. I mean, probably one of my most favorite things to talk about, because again, when I was watching other agents, I was like, none of them are doing it the way that I would do, which was really, really important for me to come right off the bat as a different agent, right? And so what I did, even before I joined a brokerage, was I went out and filmed 5 episodes of this series I have called Selling Sandy Springs, which is absolutely nothing about me. In fact, all I say is, "Hey, I'm Matt Lamarsh with my brokerage, and this is Selling Sandy Springs." That's all I say. So I'm hoping by just giving those 3 pieces of info, they know who I am, what I do as an agent, and then what this thing is. Like, what are we talking about here, right? And so I went around my community and I talked to coffee shop owners and restaurant owners and nonprofit organizers, and honestly, just anyone that would sit down and talk to me for 10 or 15 minutes in a very interview style, like, tell me who you are, what you do, why you love this community, what do you guys do in this community? Like, not just your business, but like, how are you involved? And how do you build community through a business? And how do you build community through a nonprofit? And it was amazing to have our mayor here in the very first episode. That really set the tone. And I have a great relationship with him and a lot of the other council people. And I know you and I have talked about this, not just within our industry, but to be involved in your community. I was our president of our HOA for years. I've been involved with many different community organizations long before I got into real estate. So all these connections that I made perfectly folded into my real estate career. And so with Selling Sandy Springs, I was really trying to put a spotlight on our city. Like, why did I move here? I wanted to tell that story. And so I wanted to give everyone a platform. And again, anyone and everyone that wanted to sit down and talk with me and tell their story, and not just talk about their great coffee and their pastries and why someone should choose this Mexican restaurant versus the one down the street. It was very, very granular on what makes you guys different and how are you involved and engaged in the community and what are you doing to make it better? But also, what do you love about this place? Because that sets people on fire. And in fact, I can't tell you, I mean, just over the last 2.5 years, how many messages, like DMs, text, calls, even face-to-face engagements and interactions where people have said, "I want to move to Sandy Springs." And I'm like, of course you do. It's great here. Like, I've given you everything you need, the gyms. And I mean, there's really no end to all of this content. And, you know, we're 120,000 residents now. And that doesn't even include the nonprofits and the businesses and everything else. I literally could go interview 120,000 people, community members, and I still would have content to shoot and I would still have discussions to have. So that's where I started with it. And then of course, COVID hit and we had to pivot. And that's when I went heavy into YouTube for vlogs, a little more real estate, like talking about transactions as they were happening in real time and talking about here's a major pitfall for your buyer in 2019 and 2020. And like, what does it mean to be a seller in today's market and how are things changing and what are those lead indicators that we talked about earlier? And so I kind of had to shift. I didn't have much of a choice. All my interviews got canceled. So it was like, well, what do we do now? Turn the camera around and let's go that direction. So for me, again, building the trust, building that loyalty to this guy is putting a spotlight on his community. He's giving me valuable and educational and I like to think entertaining content along the way where you get to know me as a person. and as a father and a husband and a realtor and everything else that I do. But first as a person, because again, the human element is what I felt like was just totally missing in every bit of content that other real estate agents were putting out there. So I hope that answers your question. I know it was a long-winded answer.
No, it definitely does. I want to give some context because I do think a lot of people struggle. And again, it doesn't matter if they're in the industry or they're not. They know that, having some type of content strategy matters. They run out, they want to become the digital mayor of their town. Maybe they do it the wrong way, where after they do every interview, they say, do you know anybody looking to buy or sell real estate? And they automatically lose the trust of that person. Yeah. You went out and you created a base. But as we were speaking about before, you were saying the editing took a really long time. It was a big investment in the beginning of this business. You have time or you have money and you're deploying a lot of time. Recently, you've leveled up your content in a very big way. I see a higher level of quality. I can also see that it's saving you time. And Levi likes to say, like, YouTube saves you time. People thinks it costs you time or it costs you money. No, it literally makes you money. Explain what that means. I would love you to break that down.
Absolutely. And let's just kind of level set too, right? Like when you have no money, like we talked about earlier, you do whatever it takes to create your own content around this stuff. Because, and Levi would say this, right? Like YouTube is working while you're sleeping and while other people are sleeping. And when other people aren't creating content, because again, it is a ton of work. And so when you're doing it on your own, generally most people put in a little bit of effort and then expect big results. Then when the big results don't come, they give up and they're done. For me, legacy is the underlying foundation to all of this. Regardless of if I get one buyer or seller lead or one person that ever wants to work with me forever and ever and ever, amen, that will never, ever, ever be the goal. Now, sure, if it happens, we're going to be thrilled, and I expect it to happen because I know it works. But I also know it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. But for me, when it's built on the legacy foundation, all of this is for. And if not one more person watched any more of my videos, I would be totally fine, because I know 100 years from now, my great-grandparent and my great-grandchildren, my great-great-grandchildren are going to have that outlet. I didn't get that. I didn't get that with my grandfathers. I didn't have audio podcasts to listen to them about what was happening in the 70s and the 80s with business and their family life and all this stuff. I wanted that so bad. Now, future generations will have that forever. And I mean it when I say, because honestly, and Justin, you know this, like, if you didn't get one phone call for the next 3 years about one of your videos on YouTube or on Instagram or on Facebook, what is all this for then, right? Like, why would you keep doing it? And for me, that legacy piece, and I'm a huge Gary Vaynerchuk fan, but that legacy piece is all I can leave behind. Those and the memories. And so the way that I think about that, and then pivoting into the higher quality stuff that, yes, costs money, but also saves me a ton of time. And you're exactly right. It is a profit center. People saw video from Matt Lamarsh and shooting on his iPhone and a really terrible, lavalier microphone and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden it went from here to here when I hired my video guy. And it's just absolutely amazing, not just for me to see as a content creator, the difference, but also now this guy is able to pull really, really good storylines and ultimately me out of the lens and onto the screen. And that really is connecting. And it's crazy to hear. And again, belly to belly, more than any social media comments or any context there means nothing to me. It's the face-to-face conversations and communications I'm having with people that are going, you really stepped this thing up on. You're seeing the investment in my business. That's all you're seeing. You're like, I have to do this in order for people to really take notice. But again, that underlying legacy, I don't want my kids to ever be confused about what drove dad. I don't want my grandkids to be like, I think I might have gotten that from my grandfather, or maybe my grandmother had this influence on my I just cannot wait for them to watch this type of stuff.
You make such a good point there. How many people have actually commented on the increase in content? I've heard it myself, but I'd love to know, like, how many people do you think approximately have made a comment?
That's the thing. If you look at the YouTube channel, like basically none, but like belly to belly, in person, I mean, over 20 easily. And
online too, right? Like I hear it in the rooms, the amount of people that have mentioned it, and you probably have lost count at this point, right? Of everybody watching.
It's almost like on a daily basis, right? The more rooms I'm in, the more people go follow and connect and everything. And you're exactly right. I mean, and that to me is like, that's also a really powerful point for the whole Clubhouse thing, because when I got into it, I had no idea. I don't think really any of us knew what to expect. But after a first month or maybe even two, I'm like, God, this is great information. This guy's doing this over here. Justin's doing that over there. And, even people in my own market are doing things very, very differently, but I just didn't see them. I wasn't looking for it. But now that I had exposure to them and awareness about them, I was like honed in on them. And I was really trying to learn from them on what can I take? I don't want to be Glenda Baker. And Glenda Baker doesn't want to be Matt. We're very, very different people. And that's good. Like, that's what makes her work. And that's what makes me work. Mm-hmm. But all these people trying to fit the square hole into the round peg, or the opposite way around there, that just doesn't work. And I've tried that, like, full transparency. I've tried to make that stuff me in the past. It doesn't go anywhere. And people sniff it out from a mile away, dude.
I think the consumers do as well. So speaking to the consumers, two things I want to point out. Like you said, why would you do this content if your phone doesn't ring? And the reason I asked you that leading question was, you've had nonstop people making comments about the leveling up of the content, over 20 people in the past little bit. That's a significant number, yet nobody posts anything online. And when I'm posting on Instagram or YouTube, I now understand the analytics better than I ever did. In the last 6 months, I said this to you, like, I've seen 90% growth on one of my smallest channels, but seems like nothing to everybody out there. To me, it's huge because the phone is actually ringing and it's real business. And the proximity that you have to an industry and consumers and to buyers and sellers and other professionals translates to real value for your clients. Can you explain that to somebody that would say you're wasting your time? Creating content and spending time on Clubhouse, like, you should be out selling houses. Like, what a waste of time. What would you respond to that person?
Yeah, well, and let's not get it twisted either, right? I think that the legacy portion here is really, really important because that's what keeps it going. Is my goal to get business from YouTube and from video content and from everything that I do on Clubhouse and everywhere else for that matter. 100% that is the goal. There is no confusing it. However, when the results do not come, what do we do then? And so again, the legacy piece to me is what's most important because that's what keeps the engine going. That's like the meat and the potatoes. So the results, the buyers and the sellers that come as a result of that, icing on the cake. That's all that is icing on the cake. Now we are very, very targeted on that stuff. But when it comes to the other platforms and like a strategy behind it, I'm pretty sure a lot of my clients probably have connected with me on Clubhouse as well and gone, you're on there all the time. And I'm like, it's one of the greatest things about that app is that you can do a lot of other things while you're doing Clubhouse. And I can do at least 2 things at a time. But I feel as though, especially with the first portion, when I turned the camera back around on myself and started the vlog series, you were literally getting a day by day, blow by blow, in the weeds, in the like things going really, really well and things going terribly wrong. And the reason that I think that is important from a content creation standpoint is because most people only share the glamorous, only share the sexy part of this business, right? I was sharing everything, like when the wheels were coming off, when the deal fell apart. And I think the reason that resonates with clients is because they now see a transparent person. They see someone that's authentic, regardless of what's happening around them. I can't control other people. And if you're a new agent out there and you haven't thought about that as, this part of the business is a lot of people. It's just people management. It's managing things. It's managing schedules. It's managing people. And if you don't work well with people, this is going to be a very, very short career for you. But understanding too, that other people don't determine your outcome. You do. I feel like if someone had just told me that from day one, this last 2.5 years would have been so much easier. But I really think that by educating them on the process, by telling them about what's happening, like everyone gets value from different things. Some people get value just by knowing more about me and my daily life and my family life and fill in the blank. And then there's a whole other group and segment of people that would get value from, me walking through a home and telling them what to look out for in an inspection. I really don't like to pigeonhole myself in a particular thing or in a particular category when it comes to content. I really go really, really wide. And then I try to hone in on, oh, that one did really well. Why is that? Like, what do people like about that? And I ask for feedback all the time through Instagram stories about what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Is this something I should dig into more or should I just leave it alone? So we've got all these tools though. And, our grandparents would just be rolling over in their graves if they heard people complaining about the state of things as it relates to like sales and marketing. We got amazing tools at our fingertips.
Oh, dude, it's nuts. Like, you think back to the days where they literally had to go door to door, and that's what it was, right? And I mean, shout out to Ken the door knocker. I know you're still doing it, but in the world that we live in today, I'll tell you exactly what I was thinking, what I see in your content. I see thoughtfulness behind a certain level of expertise and quality. Doesn't necessarily mean it always has to be the most expensive house, but you put care into what you put out there, right? Your brand, your persona, you do aspire to level the industry up and not just be another real estate agent or salesperson, not door to door, not towards you, Ken. I love you, Ken. I just meant in general, you just don't want to be that generalist in real estate of, every time they see you, you're going to ask them, do you know anybody who's looking to buy or sell a house? You're just showing them really cool stuff and your perspective on it, but there's thoughtfulness behind it. The same way that we really think about it, and a lesson for everybody watching. Me speaking when I'm on the beach about the area that I'm in and maybe something that I know about it that you don't is content marketing. Sharing what you're passionate about is content marketing. Developing that unconscious ability to just drop it and let it get drawn into the consumers that care is the power of the internet. I was speaking with a good friend and consult yesterday, and I told her, you do not have the right to determine what the person on the other end of that phone thinks. If you think they're going to think this or they're going to think, you need to stop that negative self-talk right now, because it's not up to you. And if they take it negatively, that's a them problem, not a you problem, unless they call you and say, hey, I want to have a conversation about that, which even people that troll you in YouTube comments, Instagram, TikTok's the worst. That place is insane. If you get any traction on a post, I just dealt with it yesterday. I've given my cell phone number out. Glenda's done this before. I know we've talked about it. Never, ever has anybody ever actually called me to have a discussion, right? So, how did you, this is one of the last questions I'm going to ask you. Yeah. How did you break down that wall of fear of what people would think about you and the scariness that is the internet? Because I know it paralyzes so many people.
Yeah, this is an interesting inner dialogue that I've had over and over and over and again. And it was really interesting how when I started my video content creation journey, it was on Snapchat. So for those of you that don't know what Snapchat is, very similar to Instagram stories, like it disappears after an amount of time. And I didn't know anyone on Snapchat. So when I signed up, I just started adding people, and discovery was a totally different beast. Like now we have it made in the shade because you can go find people and it makes suggestions based on your contacts and who you already connected through Facebook and so on and so forth, right? With Snapchat, my goal was to be secret while still being out there, if that makes sense. So none of my friends, none of my family, like no one I was actually in my phone was connected to my Snapchat account. And I built that up to like 3,000 views a day, which for those of you that spent any time on that platform, it takes a long, long time to do that. And it took me about 5 years to get to that point when I first started my lawn care and landscaping business to when I got into real estate. And the reason that I started there was because there was no judgment in terms of people from my friends, my family, like people that I knew, ran in circles with. Now, ultimately, those people found me and they started making their own judgments and so on and so forth. But by the time they did, I was so comfortable on video. And now you see like a really much more polished version of what was occurring 7 years ago. And so there's a reason that I saved those stories, uploaded them to YouTube, because I wanted to look back and go, wow, look at the transformation over 5-7 years. But also, again, back to the legacy piece, I wanted them to see what this is where it started and here's where it ended at the end of his life as far as video creation goes. And honestly, Justin, I feel like you get to a point where, and maybe this is just having a little bit of confidence or a little bit of ego in a good way to begin with, that when I only talk about what I know cars, I know real estate, I know business, I know sales and marketing, and I know how to be what I think is a pretty good husband and father, and that's always a constant work. But I only talk about what I know. So if you ask me something that I don't know about, you're just gonna hear crickets. And that's where I think I was able to really differentiate myself in my first business, was I only talked about my lane. And that's all I did all day, every day on Snapchat, was talk about that first, facing video back to me all day long, sharing my tips and tricks and what you could do to your lawn to make it great. Same thing now in real estate. The only difference is I've turned it a little bit to where now you have to buy into me first and then you get the real estate stuff. And not that it's any big secret. I mean, I think, you and I've talked about this quite a bit. I think real estate agents and realtors in general overcomplicate things way too much. This is a very, very simple thing that we do. The difficulty comes in the consistency and doing it at a much higher level, right? You mentioned earlier, like performing at this level versus performing at this level is the difference between making $50,000 a year and $150,000 a year. And the ones that make 150 or 100 and more, and again, for everyone's own right to do what they want with their business, I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm just saying in order to perform at one level versus another, it takes a significant, just like video content creation, a significant jump in effort, energy, and then sometimes, in some cases, money as well.
And it's funny because I see videos on YouTube where it's like a car wheel cracking an egg and they get 18 billion views because they're on children's channels, right? And then you put out a $2,000 video and nothing happens. And let that be a lesson to everybody watching. If you're getting started in this business, to reiterate what Matt was saying, maybe just put in your calendar twice a week to take a friend out for coffee, start pressing record and, documenting your journey and getting smarter and smarter. I think if we both went back a decade, we would laugh at some of the things that we were doing. So let's just do that to wrap this sucker up. Why don't you go back to the very beginning, Matt? What would you tell yourself now about the real estate business and what's possible? And what advice would you give yourself?
Man, so I think a lot of this comes down to empathy and self-awareness. I think that when you understand, and we talked a lot about this last night, right? Understanding who you are, where you are, what's making things work for you, but then ultimately, where do you want to go? What level do you want to take this thing to? So for yourself, self-awareness, because that's one thing that I've just been pouring into. And one of the reasons I admire you so much is because I feel like you are so in tune with who you are, and not just confident, but when you're about to get a laugh, when you're about to put people back on their heels and really make them think, right? I really admire that about you and about a lot of other people. And through my own self-awareness journey, I've really learned that me identifying self-awareness and being able to get introspective, if you will, on myself has actually helped me read and engage and have really meaningful relationships with other people, which is a little counterintuitive. But then the second piece of that, the empathy that comes along with that, is that now, especially in the real estate transaction, it can be super stressful or it can sail as smooth as you want it to, right? And any case in between. And so really adding a layer of empathy to everything. This is a difficult time. These sellers have had, hell on earth trying to get this house ready to sell for 3-6 months, whatever. Or it took them a weekend and they were good to go. And somewhere in between. Same thing with buyers. They are getting beat, offer after offer after offer, and then the one pops. Just coating everything with empathy and understanding that there is another human or another group of humans that daily depend on me to make decisions and advise them in the best way possible for the next stage of their business, of their life, of their investing, their family. This is such a powerful thing. And I think we really, really underrate the amount of impact that we can have on people's lives in this industry. So I really appreciate you, man.
It goes both ways. And I don't even think about what you said. I think it's just, I try to listen really, really hard, right? I was a broken human before. I feel like I know the big man's upstairs, got me, he's got my back. So I just don't care. I just say what I feel. I don't hide anything. I don't try to pretend to be somebody that I'm not. And I see the same evolution in you as well. And I really see you, being empathetic towards people. I've seen you on stage as well, have conversations. Maybe somebody took something somebody else said the wrong way, and I've seen you jump into the conversation saying, hey, let's just reframe that. I think you're misinterpreting why this person's pouring into you or how they said that, going back to the narrative conversation, right? So I think everybody, if you want to understand what empathy is, it's listening, it's understanding, the other person's side of the conversation, their worries, their concerns, and then being there to take care of them. So we'll wrap up on that point, brother. I definitely appreciate you. And I want to point everybody in your direction so they can connect with you, and thank you for the episode. Where's the best platform for them to reach you on?
Well, first, happy Canada Day. I forgot.
There you go.
In the beginning as well.
See that? I got Canada on my back. So yeah, there you go. I'm all redded up today.
The easiest way to find me, I think, with all my socials and everything linked, is just my website, mattlamarsh.com. The videos are there, the podcasts are there, my listings are there. It's all there and of course my cell phone. I'm always, one of the things, again, I really admire about you is your accessibility. I know you're a super, super busy dude, but I always feel like I can just pick up the phone and say, hey, check on you, see how you're doing, and honestly just use you as a sounding board for a lot of different things. So I really, really appreciate your time today, man. Thanks so much.
Dude, community is a superpower. I'm the least busy guy you'll ever meet because you leverage technology. And this is why, like, this is what I try and tell our clients, right? Like, all this stuff actually allows us to be more available than the guy that's just racing, trying to do everything, falling forward. Janet Dale, Himmel, Herber, good stuff. I'll be looking into the mayor interview, former current mayors, both neighbors. That's awesome, Janet. That is amazing. Connect with Matt, send him a message on Instagram. You can ask him about that strategy. And our man, Matthew Weber, two really good guys here. Tons of great advice. Matthew, you're a beautiful man. His stories are awesome. Anybody go follow him. I feel like I get a wrap up of his world. And this is what the power of community and social is. Matt, appreciate you so much, my brother. I will see you on the next Clubhouse, I'm sure.
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate you.
All right. See you, dude.